episode 73 of our weekly CRICKETher Vodcast. We are snatching a quick few minutes between matches in the 100 here at home to record this podcast. We were at the Ageas Bowl yesterday to see the Brave beat the Superchargers. It was a top of the table clash, but in the end it was a pretty easy win for Brave, and they've now won 5 out of their 6 matches. So are they qualified for the finals, Sid?
Bottom line is not quite. There's still a scenario where if they lose both their last 2 matches quite badly, they could still finish 5th on net run rate and not qualify for the final stages. So they're not quite there yet, but they're really, really close. Like 99% of the remaining scenarios, they get through. So that's great news for them. And in fact, everybody mathematically can still qualify. There's still situations where the Phoenix and the Originals at the bottom of the table can still qualify. So everyone's still got something to play for. You might as well, because you never know what happens. There's now, it might be 100 to 1 shot, but 100 to 1 shots will occasionally happen. So everybody should still be going for it. The bottom line, though, is that obviously the Bravers are in pole position, and they does look like they're going to qualify for directly for the final. And then the Superchargers, they obviously no need to be disheartened there. They're still very likely to qualify. And the Invincibles and the Rockets are in pole position to take that 3rd spot. And we'll be seeing the Invincibles and the Rockets later today at the Oval. So look out for that one on your telly box or on your YouTubes or whatever it is the kids use these days.
Okay, and a few words about yesterday's match at the Ageas, I guess. I wrote a piece. I think that obviously Sophia Dunkley was kind of, in many ways, the star of the show. She was voted the match hero. She just about got to her half century off the last ball with that single, which also brought up the win. So that was great for her. I thought that Superchargers kind of lacked a little bit of lustre in the field, and maybe got a bit of an issue about the fact that Bess Heath isn't kind of taking the wicket-keeping gloves, as I said in my piece yesterday, and that means that sometimes she's looking a little bit uncomfortable in the field, and you really do have to be very sharp in the field in these kind of quick-fire wham-bam 100 games. So they've maybe got a few things to think about before their next match. But I kind of was able to express that in the piece yesterday. Sid, you were obviously there in the press box. Did you have any kind of extra thoughts?
It was a nice smashing performance from the Brave, wasn't it? They've achieved 3 of the 4 fastest run chases in the tournament. They've got a net run rate far in excess of anybody else, and they're just going great guns, and they look odds on to qualify directly for the final. Of course, when you get to the final, it's still the case of anything could happen, so it could still go wrong for them and they not win that trophy. But the performance yesterday really looked like something that was on a level above where anyone else is playing. And I thought 3 particular incidents really pulled that out. I thought Lauren Bell's ball to Bess Heath, who, slightly feels like we're picking on her here, but we really don't want to be. But Lauren Bell bowled a short ball to Bess Heath that was, kind of up in her grill. She couldn't cope with it. She tried to sort of hook it, and it ended up skying and getting caught. And it was a ball, a really good bowler bowls to a batter that's just not quite on the same level as them. So there was that. There was Sophia Dunkley came in and smashed her first ball for 6. Again, it's like, well, I'm just, I'm better than you. I'm on a different level. And then towards the end, even Maia Bouchier, who's, we've seen a lot of good performances from Maia in the, the past sort of 8 or 9 years that we've been watching her play. But she really took it to another level yesterday. And there was one particular shot she played where she kind of pulled Katie Levick for 4 towards the end. And it was just like, you're Katie Levick, you're the leading wicket taker of all time in the Women's County Championship. I don't care, I'm a better player than you are right now. And, it was the audacity of all those moments that really made it feel like the Brave were playing, almost a different game. So, fantastic performance from them. And, it's going to take a really good performance to beat them in the final, I think.
Okay. Now, we have been going to quite a few matches at the ground, but we've also been watching quite a lot at home on TV, which is a little bit of an unusual experience for us, because normally we do try to get to the ground, but there's so many matches going on in so many different corners of the country, it would be impossible to get to all of them. What have you made of that experience of being at home and watching it on the telly, Sid?
Well, it has been a different experience, hasn't it? And there's a variety of ways in which it's different. One way is in which just hearing the commentators and hearing somebody else's perspective is interesting. It's always good when you go to the ground to try and sit with somebody smart, especially sit with somebody smarter than you are, because then they can help to explain what's going on. But the commentators are always giving a different insight and a different picture, and so you don't always agree with that picture actually, and you have to be a little bit careful sometimes not to let the commentators biases and prejudices, because they have biases and prejudices just like we do, get in your way. So there's that. There's some things that you just don't notice when you're at the ground, which you obviously will notice on telly. And the biggest thing for me is seeing the speed gun and the results of how fast people are actually bowling. So, we watch almost all our cricket by going to the ground, and you're judging that very much by looking at somebody and going, well, does it look like they're bowling fast?
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be a bit deceptive as well. Sometimes people can appear to be bowling faster than they really are. And we're actually seeing some results on a speed gun, and that's been kind of interesting to see who's really pushing 80 miles an hour, and also actually to see how much difference that makes. How much difference it make between somebody that's pushing up to 80 miles an hour and someone that's only bowling 72, 73, 74. I'm kind of feeling not much, but everyone will have their perspective on that. So but it's been fun watching it on television, and it's been great that the Sky have been broadcasting these games and getting good audiences for them. Ralph, what have you made of watching it on telly?
Yeah, I think as you say, it's brilliant to be able to watch so many matches and to almost have that appointment viewing. I think I hadn't really taken that in before the tournament. Actually, we know that we can sit down at 3 or 3:30. It's been this week because of the men's test, just to kind of every day sit down and watch that match, and that's brilliant. And obviously, the intended audience is kind of kids who are at home in the summer holidays. So that's been really good. I think I found the commentary quite frustrating at times, I have to say. There's been some, what I consider to be some quite unforgivable mispronunciations of really kind of big, important players' names. We're still hearing after years people mispronouncing Nat Siver's name. It's really not that hard.
And how little attention do you have to have been paying to the women's game to have not realised that how to pronounce the name of the person who's consistent. This is not like someone that's come from nowhere. This is someone that's been over the last 5 years has been a World Cup winner and has consistently been at the top of the ICC's rankings. One of the best players in the world, has played practically every, if not every, England game in the last 5 years, and they're still calling her Nat Skyver.
Rodriguez as well, who's kind of been one of the outstanding players of the tournament so far, and yet people still don't seem to be able to do her the courtesy of doing some research and working out how to understand how to pronounce her name. So that's frustrating. I think that there's also this kind of idea that it's great because somebody like Kevin Peterson is commentating on women's cricket and how exciting, but it's actually I just find it quite patronising sometimes, the way he's like, I've just discovered that women can play cricket, and in particular, I've just suddenly seen that Lauren Bell is quite a good bowler, and we're just like sat here going, we've been saying this for years. And also she did have quite a decent high profile in the last couple of years of the KSL as well. So if KP had actually done any research, then he would know that, and maybe just admit and just say, I haven't seen her before, but I understand that she's been putting in these great performances, and she was in the England squad or the England bubble last summer, for example. But no, he just rocks up and and just acts like because he's only just seen these women play, that means that therefore nobody else could possibly have been aware of them. And yes, I am picking on him in particular because I think he's been a particular culprit, but there have been many others. So that has been a bit frustrating. I think the worst thing that we've seen so far, though, was something that I actually wrote a piece about for CRICKETher this week, which was earlier in the week when Deandra Dottin hit those back-to-back boundaries to win that game for London Spirit against the Superchargers at Lord's, and just before she did it, she took off her helmet, which is obviously against the rules, but got loads of praise from the commentators and from some written press and people on Twitter as well, kind of in what's really quite an irresponsible way, I think. She was then given the Match Hero Award, and people were, the commentators are saying things like, oh, it's so exciting, and it's the fact that she meant business as soon as she took off her helmet. And that's actually really quite a dangerous way to talk about something that was dangerous for her, but also potentially for an easily influenced young audience watching at home. To hear them say that about dispensing with a piece of protective equipment that can protect you from a fatal injury ultimately is quite disappointing. So I found that quite worrying, and really think that people, especially TV commentators, because they are the most kind of high profile people talking about the game, but also written press like us, do need to be careful about how we are framing incidents like that. So yeah, that's my feeling. I know that you had a few thoughts on the Dottin incident as well, Sid.
Yeah, I find it really frustrating, because I think that it's, for me, what's really important to kind of maintain about the 100 is that, for all the fact that it's entertainment, it needs to remain a sporting contest. And it needs to remain a fair contest. And to our knowledge, and I stress to our knowledge, there's been no comeback for the Spirit or for Deandra Dottin for doing that. And it's just not fair on anybody else to just blatantly break the rules like that and have no comeback. And we know that the 100 has already a little bit been manipulated in the direction of kind of a circus and entertainment. The whole business of the 8th game. So there's 8 teams, which means that really there should be 7 games. They've introduced an 8th game where each of the local teams plays each other twice. So you get 2 London derbies, effectively. That's totally driven by commercial interest. It's completely unfair from a sporting perspective, because it means that it's not a balanced competition anymore. We were aware that the 100 had made some concessions in that direction and had gone a little bit away from pure sporting integrity. But at the point where you're just allowing someone to break the rules and there's no comeback on them, that is very disappointing, I'm afraid.
On a more positive note, let's finish up the Vodcast by talking about something a little bit more positive, which is the fact that this week there's been a bit of news announced by the BBC that they are going to be covering 3 extra matches in the group stages of the women's competition in the 100. I think originally they were only showing 1 of the group stage matches on the main channel, but they've said now that they're going to show 3 more. And that's a decision that's clearly been driven by the amazing levels of interest in the competition. Obviously the BBC aren't kind of a charity case. They are doing this because they want more people to be watching, and they expect more people to be watching.
Yeah, I think everyone's been surprised by the level of interest, haven't they? I mean, perhaps we shouldn't have been, because we've always been saying that, that this is still an exciting game and it's a great game to watch. And even though women's cricket obviously doesn't have the power game that the men does, because of just physical differences, nevertheless it can still be an exciting game to watch and an interesting game to watch, and there's still great narratives and there's still wonderful skill on show, and all these things have come together, and people are actually starting to set up and take notice. And there's some. It's a little bit of happenstance has come into this, but I do think that the way that the double headers have been organised has made a huge difference. So I was thinking about this, and actually in some ways it's one of the first times we've seen genuine double headers, as in matches where we've really got something quite close to equal billing between the two sides. So we've seen a lot of things that are called double headers in the past, but I mean, you've been to double headers in Australia, Raf, I've been to them in this country, where the women's game hasn't even been advertised. Your ticket will say, Australia v England or whatever, and that'll be Australia v men. It'll have a start time of 2:00 in the afternoon or whatever it is, and that'll be the start time of the men's game long after the women's game is finished, because that's played at 10:00 in the morning, because they want to get it through, because the men insist on having 2 hours access to the dressing room before it. Whereas on this occasion, they've kind of pushed everything together. They've got a short gap between the games, and these proper double headers are really working. Yesterday, we at the Aegeus, we had well over half the crowd, didn't we, for the women's game compared to the men's game. So in most cases, we're seeing the crowds well up there for the women's game. Thousands of people are watching this. We're seeing bigger crowds for these women's games than we usually get at England matches. In fact, probably the 100 is like, individual games are getting more crowds than we had in the entire England-India series.
Yeah.
I would think is not
I
far
mean,
off.
that was affected by
yeah,
COVID. But, yeah.
So there were some limitations on tickets, and it wasn't, the best weather for some of those games. So people may have had tickets that didn't turn up. But, overall, it's worked really well. And, the BBC have seen this. There's been great interest. And they've responded to it, and it's probably what they should have done in the first place. They should have known, if it's that old thing that, as it says from the movie, if you build it, they will come. And the BBC have realised that is great news.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, it's really exciting, and long may it continue. We're looking forward to the last couple of weeks of the competition. We're hoping to be at the ground for the eliminator, I think they're calling it, the sort of semi-final, and then.
Yeah, it does sound a bit. You will be eliminated.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to go. Actually, I'm a bit scared. And then obviously the final at Lords, which should be a great occasion, and let's hope for a really good crowd for that as well, building on the success of the women's competition in particular so far. So I suppose we need to give a little bit of credit to the ECB.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Don't know if they'll be watching, but. Yeah, well done. Okay, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And we're off to the Oval in a bit. See you in a week's time. Bye for now.
Bye.